report 2024. How much progress are we making in decarbonizing our transport system? My name is Sonja van Rensen. I'm here to moderate for you this afternoon. I'm an energy, climate, and environment journalist here in Brussels, and I've also headed up a website called Energy Monitor as its editor-in-chief for the last couple of years. That website has been dedicated to the energy transition worldwide, and inevitably transport has made up a big chunk of what we write about. So we're here today at, I guess, an important moment from a policy and political context. We're looking ahead to elections here in Belgium, also at European level on the 9th of June. So we're coming to the end of a 5-year cycle. We're on the cusp of starting the next cycle. And that means it's a very good moment to take stock of how far we've come and to think about what comes next. Today, we're here more specifically to mark the launch of a new piece of work by T&E, Transport and Environment, a new analysis looking specifically at the state of European transport today. The press release hit my inbox this morning entitled, "Europe's Transport Sector Set to Make Up Almost 50% of the Continent's Emissions in 2030. There's a whole bunch of data underpinning that, and if you haven't done so yet, I suggest you have a look online. There's an actual analysis, a report you can read, you can print. There's also an interactive scrolly, so you can go through and look at some of the figures, and there's a mode-by-mode analysis, so if you're interested in aviation, go check out aviation. If you're interested in a specific sector, like energy or cities, you can also have a look at that. William, T&E's executive director, is going to give you a flavor of what's in all that in a moment. For me, I guess the idea of this event this afternoon is to think about how far we've come with transport, the challenge it still nonetheless represents for climate policymakers, but also the opportunity that it has become, what the Green Deal has delivered, what it has not delivered, and then, of course, what comes next. So what kind of projections do we have for emissions from the transport sector, what might come, what needs to happen in the realm of policy, how that's likely to be shaped or may be shaped by politics, and finally, what potential business opportunities are out there, and therefore, what kind of investment might we expect, can we incentivize that will ultimately get the transport sector on track to net zero by 2050. As I said, we're going to hear from William about what T&E has done, the work it's done. We're going to have a short video message from Maros Šefčovič, and then we're going to have a panel debate. We'll make sure we have time for some Q&A towards the end of that, so about 10-15 minutes. If you have questions, please save them up, and we look forward to taking them. And on the panel, we'll have the Commission present as the architect of the Green Deal. We're going to have the Brussels Transport Minister as the architect at local level of that Green Deal, and also responsible ultimately for actually implementing it, which is a whole challenge in itself. We're going to hear from the provider of mobility, in this case Volkswagen, so the road transport sector. We're going to hear from the consumer side, the demand side, with Monique from BEUC, the European Consumer Organization, and finally, the shipping sector. And we wanted to somehow bring in all modes, so we've also got road transport via the car industry and aviation. Well, we're hoping the Commission is going to step in and tell us something about how we decarbonize that fastest growing source of emissions. With that, I'd like to hand over to William Totes, Executive Director for T&E. He's been with the organization since 2011, has headed it up for the last 7 years now and overseen a phase of huge growth. So growing from 28 to 68 people, you've got 6 regional offices now. You've come a long way, and we're looking forward to hearing from you what's in this first, possibly not last, analysis of European transport.
Thank you so much, Sonja. I think you set the scene really well for this conference. And let me first add from my side a really warm welcome to each and every one of you. It's good to to see many old friends. It's good to see regulators here. It's good to see a Spitzenkandidat in this room.
Who's laughing? You again.
But it is particularly good to see so many of TNE's members in this room. That happens almost never, that we are all together here in Brussels. So thank you to all our members and partners for joining us here today. Why this conference? Well, over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, we have made really incredible progress in transport decarbonization, at least on the regulatory side. And I think all of you who have worked on bits and pieces of it will know the highlights, be it the cars or the ETS or the fuels. But how does this all fit together? And as Sonia said, what does it actually mean? Where are we now? Where will the Green Deal bring us? And what else might we need to do? Is the next phase, is that just implementation? Is it just industrial policy to make sure it works? Or might we actually need to do a little bit more in the transport sector? So that is the purpose of the conference today. And I'm really happy that we have such a distinguished and really great group of people to discuss that with us. But I would also say we wouldn't be TNE if we hadn't already done some of our own homework. So over the last couple of weeks and months, we've been very busy crunching numbers to try and come up with what we consider the state of transport and how things might look like in the future. So I'm very proud to present that to you in the next 10 minutes or so. So if everything goes well, I click on this and you will see the slide. Wow, wonderful. The story of transport. Let me first have a drink. The story of transport begins, of course, with this slide. It is the only sector in the economy where, since 1990, emissions have grown significantly, very significantly. Whilst the rest of the economy has reduced its emissions by 38%, the transport emissions grow by 25%. So a lot of the progress we've made in the power sector, in the building sector, in industry has been undone by emissions caused by travel. Now, all of this has led, over time, to transport becoming the single largest source of carbon pollution in our economy. Transport used to be 17% of the climate problem in Europe. It is now, in 2022, 29% of the problem. That is including aviation and shipping. Now, if you break that down, you see that cars are still by far the largest single source of emissions in transport. But you will also see that a lot of the growth in the transport sector comes from other sectors. It comes from shipping, it comes from aviation, and it comes from what we call the freight, the goods sector, so trucks and vans. Now, if you look at this graph carefully, you will see that I would like to talk about the decarbonization trajectory of transport, but it's not actually a decarbonization trajectory yet. But the emissions journey of transport is a bit of a hilly journey. We have actually reached the peak of transport emissions in 2007. Emissions have never rebounded to 2007 levels. And that is, of course, the financial crisis. But it is also, and I think it's important to underline that, the first climate and energy package. And if you go on our website, I'm not able to show that slide to you today because I need to prioritize. But if you go on our website, you will see that since 2007, in the car sector, there has been a strong decoupling between the growth in activity and the emissions. And I think that is directly attributable to the first climate and energy package. So climate policy, European climate policy works, it does make a difference. However, from that Mount Everest, the downward climb it's not a very steep trajectory so far. In fact, in the mid-2010s, emissions started to go up again, and then in 2019 they reached what I hope, and I think, I'm not sure I want to place a bet on it, but I think this will be the last peak of transport emissions. And the reason I'm able to say that is because we have looked, and I think we're the first ones to have done that, at the 2023 emissions data from transport. And what they show is that emissions have rebounded after the COVID crisis, but they have not fully rebounded. And they are like 5-6% below 2019, which is significant. And that is partially because aviation is not fully back to where it was, because flights to China are not fully back to what they were. But it is also, and you can see that at the bottom of the slide, because car emissions have not rebounded to 2019 levels. And in relative terms, this is not a huge reduction, but because it is such a large source of emissions, we're actually talking about a reduction of 30 megatons, which is just a big deal. And that is attributable to a change in lifestyle because of COVID, high fuel prices, but also to the change in the fleet because of electrification, and that will only accelerate over the coming years. So the good news is emissions have peaked. The bad news is that after our Mount Everest and K2, we are still not going down very, very fast in the next couple of years. And we forecast that if, based on the policies that we have adopted as the European Union, we forecast that emissions from transport will decline quite slowly, and that is normal if you introduce policies that only really take effect in 2030. If you say new cars have to become a lot cleaner in 2030, well, then obviously your fleet is not going to be a lot cleaner before 2030. That's only going to have an impact after 2030. And that actually applies to almost everything we've done. So in the coming years, you shouldn't expect transport to start doing this. At the same time, the rest of the economy, the power sector, the building sector, I think we can expect significant emission reductions, and based on the policies, we would forecast that the rest of the economy decarbonizes 6 times faster than the transport sector. If that happens, you can argue about assumptions, etc., but if that happens, by 2030, transport is 44% of our emissions. So to those people who say, we have now dealt with transport, let's move on to something else, well, I don't think so. That is not to say that the Green Deal is not a major achievement. When I started in 2011, the Commission came out with a white paper saying that we were going to reduce emissions by 60%. I think everybody was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but how the hell are we going to do that? We have just regulated for an emission reduction that is bigger than that. Based on our modeling, by 2050, transport emissions will be more than 70% lower than the 2025 peak. That is a huge improvement, and I think we can be quite, we can be quite proud of that. But it is also clear that this is not aligned with the 2040 goal or with the 2050 net zero goal. So we will need to step up. What I think is the good news is that stepping up doesn't require a complete revolution in the way we travel or in the technology we use. It actually requires a combination of 4 things. First of all, it requires us to electrify our fleets, our company cars, which make up more than half of new vehicle sales in Europe, to electrify those much faster. This is really the lowest hanging fruit of the transport decarbonization challenge, and my country shows that this is possible. The second thing we will need to start doing, if we go towards 2040, 2050, is we will need to scrap combustion engine vehicles earlier than their natural lifetime. So we cannot have 15, 20-year-old diesel and petrol cars on our road in 2040 and 2050. And that might sound like, oh, that is an ambitious idea, but actually it's completely logical. This is exactly what we're doing in the power sector. At some point, you reach 100% clean energy additions, and your next challenge is, let's close down the coal power plants. And that is what we will need to do in the transport sector too. Then there's shipping efficiency. This, I think, is something that we have not spent enough time and effort on. And the final point is, and I found that actually one of the biggest surprises doing this work is that if you stop expanding your roads and your airports, you actually reduce emissions very significantly, because all transport models assume that transport activity continues to grow. And actually, if you don't expand your road infrastructure, you will not expand your car kilometers. And this is actually one of the biggest contributors to us getting to zero. Now, people get a bit nervous when we talk a bit about demand. So I want to show you this slide. This is I think this is London. London is a thriving city. It's not a destitute place where people are poor and unhappy. It is a city where the economy has grown very strongly. It is a city where the population has grown significantly. It is also a city where, after 30 years, transport activity is about what it was in 1990. And that is the result of choices. It is the result of the introduction of the congestion charge, prioritization of cycling, overexpanding motoring, and it is resulting in this picture. And that is kind of what we have in mind for the rest of the economy, not to take anything away from people, but simply to grow or develop in a different way. I want to leave you with a final slide. And that slide is called Transport and Energy, and sometimes we are wrongly referred to as Transport and Energy. People say, "Dear Mr. Tots from Transport and Energy." I don't correct him because I think it's actually quite a good name for this organization going forward. I mean, we're not going to change our name, but I think it would make sense because the last 30 years they were all about petroleum, combustion engines, and tailpipes. The next 30 years are all about electrons. It's about how do we get clean electrons into our batteries, how do we get clean electrons into our green hydrogen, and how do we deploy green electrons to produce the vehicles and the vessels and the infrastructure we need to power this new transport system. The last thing I will say here is that currently, road vehicles make up around 2/3 of energy demand in transport. If you see this transition through, road vehicles, cars and trucks combined will actually be the minority of energy demand in transport. And that is because electric vehicles are just really, really efficient. And then hydrogen-based fuels are just a lot less efficient. So by 2050, the biggest source of demand for energy in transport will be aviation and shipping. And so that is the final point I wanted to make. There's so much more in the state of transport analysis. We have a lot of this information broken down by country. We have a lot more information on individual cities, on individual modes. So I really encourage you all to go and have a look at it. It's work I'm very proud of. But I think these were the highlights, and I hope they provide some impulses for the rest of the conference today. And I want to thank you again for being here. In such large numbers, we are competing with terraces and beers. So I'm extra grateful to you all. So thank you so much, and looking forward to the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Can we play Šefčovič's video then? So introducing remotely Executive Vice President Maroš Šefčovič, in charge of the Green Deal at the Commission.
Hello. It's a pleasure to participate in this very timely event, taking stock of the state of transport in the European Union. And I first want to thank Transport and Environment for your work to further the greening of Europe's transport, including the ideas laid out in your recent publication entitled A Guide to Transport 2024-2029. That period will unfold in a new political environment following the European elections in June. But I think we can be proud of what we have achieved in the current mandate under the European Green Deal. We have now put in place a firm foundation to build on. This is especially important for the transport sector, which is responsible for 32% of final energy consumption and 24% of total greenhouse gas emissions. Decarbonising this sector will require an integrated approach to transport policy. First, transport should be electrified, wherever possible, increasingly powered by renewable electricity. Second, increasing shares of sustainable renewable fuels will be needed to decarbonize those forms of transport that are not easily electrified. For example, in road transport, we now have in place binding requirements to accelerate the transition towards zero-emission vehicles and recharging and refueling infrastructure. We can already see the concrete results. Nearly 15% of new cars registered in 2023 were battery electric, 3 times more than in 2020. In the same year, more than 30% of new buses were electric. In the maritime and aviation sectors too, we have a clear roadmap and regulatory certainty for decarbonization in the coming years. For example, the FuelEU maritime regulation serves as a cornerstone for the transition of the maritime sector to cleaner fuels with the goal of decreasing the greenhouse gas intensity of energy utilized on ships by 80% by 2050. And the inclusion of the maritime sector in the EU emissions trading system will create new opportunities for innovation, investment, and green jobs while helping to protect the environment. Thanks to Refuel EU Aviation, meanwhile, sustainable aviation fuels will have to become increasingly available at major airports, reducing life cycle aviation emissions at least 65% compared to kerosene. Our focus is now on implementing the measures we have put in place. That will require substantial investment. So, for example, nearly a third of the money under the Recovery and Resilience Facility, some 42 billion euros, has been allocated to sustainable mobility. The new ETS will provide funding to address transport and energy poverty through the 82 billion euro Social Climate Fund. Then the Innovation Fund is supporting the development of innovative new transport solutions. At the same time, we must continue our efforts to mobilize the private funding, which will be necessary to accelerate the green transition in the transport sector. This will be a difficult task, but I'm confident that together we can achieve it. Thank you.
A round of applause for Vice President Šefčovič. Okay, with that, let's move straight into the debates. And I'd like to welcome up all the panelists, if you'd like to make your ways up. So Elke van den Brandt, Beatrice Jordi, Christoph Sebastian Klitz, Sotiris Raptis, and Monique Goyens. And you can come up and you can sit where you like. I'll probably perch on the end here. Just have got a good overview of you all. Go ahead. I'll give you each a brief introduction. I'm okay with you sitting where you like. Is it clear to everyone who's who? I'm going to introduce them as well. Or is that going to be a problem? Yeah. We don't want to confuse. There are people joining us via Zoom as well, so I'm conscious we don't want to confuse them. So I'll give everyone a quick introduction. So next to me, Elke van den Brandt, Brussels Transport Minister, or the full title is Minister of Mobility, Public Works and Road Safety in the Brussels capital region. She's been in this position since the summer of 2019. She's with the the Green Party, entered the Brussels Parliament back in 2009, was re-elected in 2014, migrated to the Flemish Parliament, and then led the Groen list in the Brussels region during elections in May 2019 and took her post up that summer. So welcome to you. Next to her, we have Sotiris Raptis, Secretary General of the European Community Ship Owners Associations. So here representing the shipping industry on the panel. He's been with the association for the past, coming up to 4 years now, has headed it up for the past 2 years, was previously with the European Seaports Organization, and before that was with T&E. So a blast from the past. It seemed relevant in the context. Beatrice Jordi, in the middle. Director for Carbon Markets and Clean Mobility at DG Klima at the European Commission. So she's responsible for the team overseeing the EU ETS as well as clean mobility. She's been with the Commission for many years and has worked across subjects, mainly in the realm of energy policy, eco-innovation, the LIFE program. I saw and across DGs, so EASME as well as DG Environment, and obviously now DG Klima, DG Environment in the past. And I saw what I didn't know, that you were the chief engineer in Europe's first solar PV project. So interesting fact.
I was not in T&E.
No, not at TNE. That was not TNE.
Not yet.
Not yet. Indeed. And next to her, Christoph Sebastian Klitz, head of the Volkswagen Group's representative office here in Brussels, which he's headed up since 2008. He's been with the company far longer than that and has held various positions both here in Brussels and in Berlin, and has been involved in various other industry-related associations like the BDI, the German Federal Industry Association, and I saw you headed up, or Deputy Director of the Office of German Industry and Trade in Washington, D.C. at some point, and has also worked for Deutsche Telekom, for example, in the past. And you're a board member of the European Movement International, so welcome. And finally, last but not least, Monique Goyens, a familiar face, I hope, to many of you, who's been on the Brussels scene also for a long time. Director General of BEIC, the European Consumer Organization, which she's headed up since 2007. And I learned with regret that she's due to retire later this year. So we'll be passing the reins on to a capable replacement. We don't know yet who, but they'll be capable. Monique will see to that. We'll see to that, I'm sure. So what we wanted to do was kick off with a question to everyone, and we've got a bunch of topics we want to talk through. As I said at the start, we will take your questions once we get going, probably the last 10, 15 minutes or so, and that will take us through to a closing by Spitzenkandidat Bas Eickhout, and we'll make sure we leave you your 10 minutes for that. So we wanted to kick off with yourself, Elke, probably because you're in the unenviable position of actually having to see through the Green Deal, to actually do something with it.
I consider myself lucky to be able to, but
yeah, take it beyond a concept on paper and actually turn it into reality. There's obviously a lot in there. The concept is new, to be confirmed. How and to what extent it's continued after the elections in June. And I guess what we want to start off with was to ask you what does it mean to you, and practically what does it mean for Brussels? Of how have you interpreted it and implemented it in Brussels?
For us, the Green Deal is a big deal. It is very important for Brussels. First, on a very personal level for me, because it shows how a movement of mainly young people demanding climate change have resulted in results. So I think on a personal level, that's encouraging to see that change is possible. But also on a political level, if we need strong European legislation in Brussels to make a move. It's important to convince other partners in coalition, but it's also important because it set goals and we need to respond to these goals. We actually have no choice. So it gives us a framework in which we can and has to act. So it's a sad day for the Nature Restore Law, but for me, these restoration law, for me, these are things we need. We need these European frameworks. Also, so for the political to put in place programs, to put in place ambitious goals, but also, let's be frank, we need the money from Europe as well. We have had a lot of European fundings for programs, and these helped us a lot. I'm just going to give one example. It's the Cargo Bike project. It's a project for which we got European funding, and it gives the opportunity to explore cargo bikes. And you'd say, oh, this is just a detail. It's true, but many details make a big difference. And these cargo bikes are now used by many companies. We have transport companies who are now saying, well, for part of our transportation, we are in cargo bikes because it's faster, it's more reliable, we know exactly when we arrive, it's good publicity because they're in the road. So this is just one example of which the funding is helping us to make a difference, but in general, especially because Europe is setting goals and we need those goals. We need ambitious European urban transport plans and the sums, and it is because of Europe who is demanding from regions to put in place sums that we've done it and that we can reply to the goals, and so we need Europe.
Okay. And what would you say is the biggest challenge you've come up against? Because clearly, I'm thinking to programs like Good Move, which a lot of people supported, but a lot of people also didn't support. And I think back at the time, it was initially due to be rolled out in 11 districts in Brussels by the time of the elections. I'm guessing that's not going to be the case. And so how, maybe it is. Tell us if it is, and I suppose how have you, how do you deal with that? And how do you take something like that forward in practice, or do you shift? What do you do?
First of all, good move is often considered as one measurement is circulation plans in neighborhoods, which is one of the 50 measurements in it. So it's also about having more public transport. It's also about changing logistics. There's a lot of different measurements in this global mobility plan. Good move is our mobility plan. So we've set a goal in 10 years, which actions do we want to take and how do we get there? And the aim is, because we talked about the reduction, the aim is to reduce 65% of our reduction on transport, which is important. And we already have a reduction since 2005 till now of 21% of our transport reduction. So it is putting it in the right direction. There's many measurements of it. And for many of them, there's contestation. And each measurement we put in place has encountered some backlash. I think it's part of the game. And it's logical, because you touch the daily lives of people. You're touching the daily habits of people. And people know where to go, how to go. They have their habits, and our minds are programmed to be in the same habit every day. So asking people to change is is a big thing. And so when we put in place the 30 kilometers an hour in Brussels, which is about driving slower, it was like the world would explode. And it was impossible. And there would be no more Brussels, and nobody would come here, and it would be empty. And now what we see is that people do drive slower, 20% slower. We see that Brussels is still accessible. You need to fight for a place in a terrace. You're all here, thank you for it. But if you want to try to find a place now, it will be difficult. So it is accepted after a certain time. The same with the huge pedestrian area in the city center. It was installed. It was a big crisis. Now nobody wants to go back. Can you imagine that you have 2 times 2 car lanes in the heart of a city? Nobody can imagine to go back there, but putting it in place demanded some political courage at the time. So it's with everything. And so now we are in the phase of putting in place circulation plans. And again, there's a lot of backlash. But we also are starting to see the results in the city center. We have reduced the people getting around in cars by about 20%, and the same amount of cyclists on plus. So we do see the positive impact. We do hear people saying, oh, there's less noise, it's nicer, it's quieter in my neighborhood. And this will be, you can never underestimate the impact of a good idea. And I know now it's put in place in some places, not as many as I would have wanted, but it is put in place in many places. And we do see that many communes are putting plans into the schuiven. Now,
Drawers?
Bas, you can
Drawers.
translate that for
Drawers.
me. In the drawers for after the elections. So that's why I'm quite positive, because they're all they have to apply for subsidies, and we have more applications than we can reply to. So they are coming, but not before the elections, because nobody wants to burn themselves to ambitious plans and telling people they need to change. But I know it's putting in place, and the change will continue, and the impact is positive. And elections will show support for the plans as well. It will be one of the topics in the Brussels elections, but I'm confident that the changes we're doing are appreciated by many people and are felt in a positive way by many people.
Okay, so it's challenging, but you have seen progress and continue to see progress, and ultimately it is, the ideas are implementable, as what you say, the experience from Brussels shows.
Brussels is, for those who've been here for 10 years or have gone and come back, Brussels is not the same place as 10 years ago. If Brussels can do it, any city can do it. Yes. But we still see the potential. We can do so much better. We have such huge potential. So yes, change is happening, and we're in the middle of it.
Okay. Let's go to Volkswagen. Are you?
Okay, we are shifting to bicycles.
Are you ready for?
And then we have a future.
Future bicycle. You can tell us about the future Volkswagen bicycle.
Yes.
Are you ready for the CO2 standards?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. I was just kidding that to keep a little bit suspense. That I have two options here, but of course the easy answer is, and William already knows it. It will be yes. Yes, but and of course we are I think one of the companies, one of the first companies in the car sector who committed ourselves to the Paris climate goals, and of course we are also committed to transform our company up to 2050 into the net zero world. And even though given the headwinds we are now facing at the moment, we are committed. We have increased the sales of pure electric vehicles last year in Europe nearly by 34%, up to 472,000 cars, which is a lot, and it now means a market share for us, a share of our overall sales in Europe of around 12.5%. It looks great, so if you look at the numbers, plus 34%, but of course at the moment sales are flawed, so at the end of the day, we need to take care what consumers are asking for and why they are more reluctant now than in the past. So that's maybe an issue which has to be dealt with in the next term. On the other hand, I think we see that some obstacles are still avoiding us to really accelerate the speed. And this is also maybe partially due to the not 100% homogeneous parts of the Green Deal. I mean, the Green Deal is not the deal. This is many different single pieces of legislation, and they all need to fit together. And we are all learning at the moment that reality comes in, and we see, for example, the FIA requirements are met by almost all member states. Surprise, surprise. But if you see at the overall numbers, we see a lot in Netherlands, Germany, and France. Belgium is catching up, at least the northern part of Belgium. But then at the end, it gets a little bit less dense. If you look at Eastern, Central Europe, also Southern Europe, there is an issue. And people fear range, proximity to charging stations. They have problems. Also, the high energy prices are adding to it. It's not the case everywhere, but at least in many member states, people are worried. They compare and they think, okay, why should I choose? Why should I switch? So we need to take into consideration these kind of things. That's important. And then also we need to, in a certain sense, to think about a more holistic approach in the next term, because it also means, for example, if we are investing heavily, we are facing a lot of geopolitical risks. If you look at raw materials for batteries, because at the moment, batteries are the most expensive part of a car, and you need to do something in order not only to ensure that we catching up, and Commissioner Šefčovič mentioned it. It's not enough to have a critical raw material act in place, but you also need the raw material, you need the value chain here, and you need to build up on that. And this sometimes takes more time. Also, given the obstacles when it comes to approvals and it comes to the question of knowledge, because skills are also important. It's not only that we have a regulation, but you need people to know how to build a battery cell, and it applies to all across over in Europe. So these are the obstacles. I will leave it here because we go deeper into some subjects at a later stage. But yes, we are committed.
Okay, just one small follow-up, more of a precision or a clarification then. Yes, you're ready. So, but we've got several dates for standards. So yes, you're ready. I presume you're talking 2035. Are you ready in the near term? Are you ready for the 2025 targets too?
We are working hard to achieve these 25 goals. It's for sure.
Is that a yes
as well? We are working hard on that. Nobody knows because the future is always unpredictable. It's like the Spitzenkandidat maybe sit in front of us. Nobody knows. But again, it's part of the efforts we all have to undertake to achieve these kind of goals.
Okay, thank you. Bea, let's come to you then. So Vice President Šefčovič already named quite a few things that the Commission's done in the context of the Green Deal. So to keep things simple, what would you say you are proudest of in the realm of transport and what's been achieved the last couple of years?
Well, I think that I will not be humble there. I think that we have achieved great things and great things together. I mean, at BAS, we just closed the deal on heavy-duty vehicles some weeks ago. And I think that what we have achieved, and I will say all together, because I feel my shoulders are larger with all these representatives of this panel, all together is a holistic societal economy change. I don't think we are exaggerating with that. I think it was, of course, it's CO2 standards, of course, it's ETS, it's maritime, it's aviation, it's infrastructure, it's critical raw material. It's impressive, and what is impressive is supply and demand. And something that we need to insist is we have the frame, let's give predictability to the industry. Let's stick to what we have adopted, because this will pull financing, this will pull success, and this European European funding was mentioned, but it's also a very attractive pot, which is fossil fuel subsidies, or is the imports from gas and oil that last year in Europe was 374 billion euros. So the package that we have put in place could be a fantastic pull-in for investment. So what I'm very proud of the massive parallel holistic, call it CO2 standard, call it ETS, aviation and maritime. And something that I'm particularly proud is, I will not correct the EVP, but he mentioned 82 billion, is nearly 87 million, the Social Climate Fund. The Social Climate Fund is that we are picking up polluter pays money and put it in inclusiveness. We have more than 35 million European poor energy citizens in Europe, and we are picking up the money out of the ETS2 building and transport and put it in inclusiveness. And I think this is a fantastic message that we are not hammering enough, and also for you to know the own resources or the new budget of the European Union. We have one proposal that money from the ETS revenues and another door to knock as politician, which is the revenues from ETS, last year nearly 40 billion euros. Part of it will go to the European budget. So it's a nice European construction, I would say. So what I'm proud is the holistic approach. What I'm proud is that we have also an inclusiveness part. Mm-hmm. And I'm proud that we are equipped to give predictability to the industry. And we are also equipped that the Fit for 55 is also a very good insurance policy. Yeah. And why insurance policy? Because we have just launched an estimation of the risk and the resilience and the cost of inaction in climate change. And I'm finished there. The cost of inaction for climate change could be 1% of GDP in 2030, not in 2050 or 100. Yeah. So let's work on this insurance Fit for 55 or Green Deal policies.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the mirror of that question, if we look ahead, what's the main thing that's still missing for you? So as we saw at the start, the latest T&E analysis shows transport has been decarbonising, or the rest of the economy rather is decarbonising 3 times faster than transport. So that somehow needs to change. And William also said, whilst current policy takes us, a good way forward, it's not enough. So what for you is kind of the main thing that hasn't been done yet and that you would hope, I guess, the next 5 years could put into place? Where's the biggest gap?
Well, we said we have done, but the ETS2, so building and transport, will start in 2027. So it's not yet done, I will call it. What we will need is a good implementation of that. And implementation can sound boring, but it's not really boring. And for that, I think that we will need that the price of ETS2 on consumers, that they are equipped to change behavior. Because I think that you're saying that it depends on consumer choice, but consumers need to be given to proper choices. And the right to plug, I think, is something very important. I mean, citizens need to have the right to plug, wherever they live, whatever area of Brussels or other European city live. So I think that how we do this implementation is clearly number one. We need a fair international competition. I mean, we need fair international competition there. We need to put the rules in the good way, and we can devote more time to that. Infrastructure, right to plug, AFIR, and more. And there's the fossil fuel subsidies pot that I insist is very attractive because it has double benefits. And inclusiveness, I think that we will need to work on that. And last part, if I could say, we have put also, I mean, whatever NINSIA, whatever critical raw materials. I think that we are getting more strategic, and rightly, in how all the supply chain needs to be covered. So not one shot in an industry, should be the whole supply chain, and to have a strategic approach there. So there's still a lot to do.
Okay, thank you. So Tyrus, let's come to shipping specifically. So shipping was relatively untouched by EU climate policy until a couple of years ago, until 2019. Now, however, we've got, it's in the EU ETS since January this year. We've got Fuel EU Maritime. We've got AFIL, Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Regulation, addressing it. What does that mean for your sector? Is this great news? Is it making a difference? New opportunities?
It's of course a great challenge. I would say that we need all hands on deck. This is, by the way, our hashtag on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Okay.
And we welcome the inclusion of shipping and the new regulations, the new AFIR, the new Fuel EU Maritime. But the challenge we're facing is how to make it happen now. Shipping is one of the most difficult sectors to decarbonize for many reasons. We were happy with the earmarked revenues under the EU ETS. That was a big win of our sector, but we need now to discuss how to use this money to organize the energy transition. I mean, the battlefield of international competition will be the uptake of clean technologies. And we need to build in Europe a strong, in our case, a strong maritime cluster. And when we say we need all hands on deck, we mean that we need clean and affordable fuels available in the market. This is what is missing, for instance, in the Fuel EU Maritime. We would be happy if we had something similar to the Fuel EU Aviation. And this is what exactly we proposed to the policymakers back in the time, that the policymakers, we need also to introduce requirements and mandate for the European fuel suppliers. And this will help the European fuel suppliers to build a strong cluster in Europe. This fits also the new industrial policy of Europe. I guess the biggest challenge for all of us, for all sectors of the economy, will be to turn, in the new period, the European Green Deal to a European industrial deal. We have a clear pathway where we need to get. And by the way, the shipping sector is probably the only international sector where the international climate ambition matches the European climate ambition. At IMO level, we aim to become net zero by 2050. But we need to turn the European Green Deal to an industrial deal and to put now the money on the table. There were reports about the new Mario Draghi report. 500 billion euros is the number, is the money we need for our energy transition. 1/3 of it will be public investments. And of course, the money set aside for the innovation fund or for the shipping sector under the innovation fund is clearly not enough.
Okay. One specific follow-up. I noticed when I was looking through the T&E analysis, one of the specific recommendations or observations is that there's still not enough incentive for increases in operational efficiency in the shipping sector. I guess, do you agree? And what might that kind of incentive look like?
The shipping sector is a bit peculiar in what sense? That we've got the owners of the ships, we've got also the operators of the ships, which are not necessarily the same entity. And this is why we work closely with the Parliament, with the Council, and with the Commission, and we've got a clause in the ETS directive for the pass-through of the costs, so that the entity, the companies that take operational decisions that affect also the operational efficiency of the ships, get the right incentives under the EU ETS. That was also another big win for our sector. This now needs to be, we need to see how this will be interpreted by the member states so that the operators are the entities paying for the costs. To be honest with you, I think it's about the uptake of clean fuels and technologies, though. I mean, of course, we need to do more on the efficiency side, but there is a certain limit where we can get by improving efficiency. We will not make it without clean and affordable fuels in the market. Let's be honest about it.
Okay. So for you, cleaner fuel technologies is the priority. Efficiency is, but there's something it can deliver, but there's a limit. And two, the incentives for that are going to be coming from the ETS. We're just not far enough yet in implementation to see those materialize. That would be your response.
You mean for the efficiency?
Yeah.
On the efficiency part, yeah, it's going to be the ETS. We have to see how the ETS will be implemented. But our big concern is that we need to see the right requirements in the Renewable Energy Directive and in the Fuel EU Maritime in the future revision. But already now, we've got voluntary targets under the Renewable Energy Directive for the shipping sector, for the fuel suppliers of marine fuels. This is voluntary, but member states are free to transpose it as a mandatory target for the shipping sector. It's already stuff that we can do tomorrow. The Innovation Fund, it's another opportunity. We need special calls for the shipping sector. We've got 20 million ETS allowances earmarked for the shipping sector. But we need to make sure that this is used by the shipping sector for the uptake of cleaner fuels.
Okay, thank you. Monique, let's come to you in the all-important demand side, which some people have touched on. We've heard some of these policies, and Elke started out, they're not always popular. One of TNE's primary recommendations is to stop airports and motorway expansion. You've been a supporter of the Green Deal. Why? How does it impact consumers, in your opinion?
Thank you very much. It's very challenging to be the last speaker because you want to respond to so many.
And you can start responding.
Well, first, I will keep Christoph's reference to the mantra of car makers saying we produce what consumers want to a later stage, because I think we can qualify that mantra to some extent. First, I have to react to my retirement. I cannot leave that without any comment. Yes, indeed, I'm going to retire at the end of October, still alive and kicking. And and it's against my consumer values. I have planified my obsolescence. And in fact, what to organize a smooth transition to a sustainable world for Berg, and Berg will be forever young and forever strong, I can tell you. So this must be a very important event, because as a Belgian, I know that we only have one day of spring, and that's today. So we should all be on the terrace. Huh? So, but maybe just a little bit later.
We'll add another day for you.
Concerning the Green Deal, of course, as a consumer organization, we don't only look at transport or at cars. We look at food, at textiles, at eco-design, at energy, at home renovation, at chemicals. So it's a very big thing. And like Elke, you mentioned, if you ask the people to change, it's quite difficult. It's even more difficult because it's all around. People, billions of people, if you want to succeed to mitigate or to adapt to climate change, billions of people need to adapt their lifestyles. The way they eat, the way they heat their house, the way they move, they commute, the way they travel internationally, the way they buy their textiles. So it is a huge challenge. Many cannot afford it. And so you cannot really rely on individuals to make the change. You need to set up a system to adapt the system so that the sustainable option is the fun option, the easy option, the affordable option. And that is the system change that for the moment we are still missing. And this is really key, and that's why we are quite a big supporter of the 2035 phasing out of combustion engines. It's a clear signal. Now it's being polluted by some fake news, let's say that, but that's something that we regret very much. But people have an investment line. They should have certainty about what's going to happen after 2035 or 2050, and this is something that we really believe it's one of the symbolic outputs of the Green Deal that we welcome as a consumer organization. Just a disclaimer on, we are supporters of the Green Deal in its initial ambition. What we are seeing today is really very concerning and to some extent a democratic scandal. We see watering down, we see procrastination, we see delays. And sometimes I say, and it's maybe also another means of transport, you just need a tractor to be able to change the content and the ambitions of the Green Deal, which is not nice to us farmers, they might be right. But fundamentally speaking, democratically, this is wrong. This is not the way, and it's again a contradictory message where people are confused. When you have consumers being confused, they will not embrace change, because they need stability. They need a way to see where their investment, if they invest in energy efficiency or in electric cars, they need to know where they're going to. And this is something that is for the moment still missing. And we say, as a consumer organization, we say there is no time to waste. There is no time to procrastinate because the cost of inaction is much higher than the cost of transition. And can I say, I would even encourage everybody to adopt a much more positive narrative. It is not a cost, it is an investment. And why is it an investment? Because once, and I will come back to that later, once the investment is taken on and the transition has taken place, consumers will win economically out of the results of that transition, meaning electric cars are much cheaper to run, renovated houses are much cheaper to heat or to cool, more durable products or energy efficient products are either less energy intensive or they are more durable, so you don't need to replace them so often. Healthier diets are better for your own health, but also for the public health system. So you have economic savings for consumers. You have, of course, the environmental savings. You have the public health savings. You have also social justice, because, for example, everything that happens in the energy sector will impact positively the less affluent ones. It's inclusiveness, because energy bill is the biggest bill, proportionally speaking, is bigger for less affluent households in their budget than for the, let's say, the average consumer. And finally, if you have healthy people, you have healthy workers. That means that your economy is more resilient because you don't, as an employer, not to take account of people that are sick. So there is a lot of benefits, and I don't hear enough about that in the mainstream narrative, and we should embrace it. Of course, then you need the investment. That's where do we get that money from? Public funding, private funding. And we hear a lot about net zero, innovation plan, and all that funds seem to be directed to industry. I would like something to happen also to the people. And you speak about social climate fund. For the moment, we don't yet see whether in reality that there is something that is going to the people, because at the end of the day, it's the people who need to invest into renovation of their homes, into buying an electric car. So upfront investments need to be mitigated, either by public subsidies or other public incentives, or by creative private solutions. And there can I say it, I don't know whether there's anybody from the banking sector here. They know that I'm saying that every time I'm in public. We really miss the creativity of, it's my last sentence, Sonia, sorry. The creativity of the financial sector in providing solutions so that consumers do not need to face that upfront investment, because afterwards they are going anyway to benefit from it. So a call to creativity of the financial sector. They can be so creative from time to time, but why not here?
Okay, thank you. Lots of points to pick up on. There was one, both you, Monique, and you, Bea, you mentioned the importance of predictability, stability, for citizens to know what to do for investment. I'm going to come back to you, Christophe, and ask, because we have the car CO2 standards, etc. We have them for trucks too. But in both of those, there's still a lot of discussion around e-fuels, around the future of the internal combustion engine, although we have this 2035 phase-out date, and we've seen in some countries, I'm thinking of the UK, where policy is reversed. So in your opinion, how do we, is the continued, I guess there's still some uncertainty over the role of the internal combustion engine, perhaps fully fueled by e-fuels going forward. Is that a distraction, and should we be focusing fully on turning the Green Deal into an industrial deal and going 100% on implementation? Or do you think, yes, no, for you it's not a worry, etc.? Is that a distraction that is potentially dangerous and risks, seeing us miss investment opportunities?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And also, Monique, I think I was just joking that she should run for Spitzenkandidat on next term and challenging you, Bas, so maybe, you never know.
No, I'm retiring.
Oh, you never have told us what you do afterwards. But to become back to the serious question you asked, I think it's totally clear for us that we stick to our electrification strategy. And that is what we're also asking from the politicians to really stay firm on that. That's totally clear, because we are heavily invested. We have set our plans. We're working to build up the whole value chain, which is costly, which is investment, and at the moment does not generate so much profits, which we need in order to reinvest again. But I think it's important to stay firm on that. Having said this, on the other hand, what do we do in order to stay as a reliable partner in the game? We do invest into different products. So in order to make electrification, electromobility more affordable. That's coming up. We will come up with new models. We already released models which are hopefully helpful to increase the ratio on fleet electrification. On the other hand, it will take more time because what we all underestimated is to build up this value chain. If you look at the battery cell production in Europe and the localization of that, because at the moment we are highly dependent from Asia and specifically from one country, it needs more time and it needs more skills. We underestimated that at the moment Europe is still learning how to do this. And then, of course, due to the war, Ukraine-Russia war, energy prices soared. And that, of course, battery cells to generate, to produce it costs a lot of energy. And, of course, green energy would be also a viable solution to that. So that hinders us a little bit and slowed down the process. On the other hand, consumers, and I fully agree with you, consumers are still reluctant. They at the moment looking at it, and because all these things happening at the same moment, they think, okay, new house, or at least isolation of the house, new car, what else? Yeah, new heating system, all at the same time. You say investment, but it's for many people, it's a cost, and they can afford it. So it also is part of the problem when it comes to transport. So we need to be not patient, but we need to be precise, give directions. On the other hand, we need to help people. We can do it by investing into the value chain, by improving efficiency, reducing costs thereby, and of course we will come up with models under 25,000, under 20,000 within the next 3 years. It sounds long, but it's not as long because knowing our planning periods. On the other hand, we think politicians can do and support something in the short term. For example, offering more subsidies or incentives for certain people, using all kind of creative tax regime benefits in order to push for this, and all this is important. And with this I will stop because I know that you have other questions to ask other people. Yeah.
But I take away that for you indeed Volkswagen electrification remains that's the end goal, and therefore in that sense it's not useful to be having a discussion or to be revisiting the phase out date.
No, but the but which I already mentioned at the beginning, the enabling conditions must be met. And therefore, I think, and this is now part of the discussion, of the dialogues, with the letter, with Draghi, with a new commission, there are some requirements needed which are not met at the moment. And therefore, we should be also clear that this is also some homework to do for the next commission and the next parliament, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, one very specific idea, then I'll come back to you in a moment, but I wanted to go to Elke first. Everything around company cars, corporate fleets. Is this the trick we're missing? Should we be changing taxation? Should we be setting an electric vehicle mandate? Company cars, big thing in Belgium too.
A big thing in Belgium, and don't ask me to explain why we're doing this because the system is crazy. What's the idea behind it? Perhaps that's important to explain. Is you pay a lot of taxes on employment. And so for some companies, it is a limit. And so they wanted to look for reduction on the fiscal system. And so we invented the company car, which is a way to pay your employees by getting, and if you pay them by car, you pay fewer taxes than when you pay them by euros. And so this is a kind of a crazy system, but it is encouraging companies to give cars to people, that's one thing. It is also putting this car as a status symbol, which is already the case. A car is a status symbol, even better in place, because if you're at the right level in a company, then you can get a car. So it even adds to the status symbol of cars. And it is encouraging traffic jams, because we're putting everything in place to have public transport, to offer alternatives. But if you have a free car in front of your door that takes you all the way to your place, and you can have a free car parking space, it's quite difficult to ask people to change. And that's what you said. If you are having all the change coming intrinsically from people wanting to change, then we can wait until 2080 before something will happen. So we need to change the structure so that it is the logical choice, that it is the easy choice, that you have a bus stop at 200 meters of your door, that you are paid more in euros than in cars, because it's more interesting to be paid in euros. You can choose what you do with it. So this is something we need to change. And all the fiscal system, we're also paying annual fees for driving with a car. So you pay your annual fee, and if you drive a lot or not, it's the same amount. It just depends on what kind of car you have. Well, we should change the system into the use of the car, and so that you pay, and if you drive a lot, you will pay some more. If you drive, especially during peak hours, or you drive a very heavy or very polluting car, you can pay more. So we have all the technology to help us to more orient people also in the fiscal system, and so taxation by usage instead of possession of the cars is also something crucial. So yes, we need to change the systems, and I'm always surprised at how impossible it is to talk about it, because I can say it here and then nobody is wooing me, and if I do this in front of a Belgian audience, it's not the same impact. So thank you very much for that. But I often think if you're in 2050 and we're looking back at this period, and we have all this knowledge, we have all this technology, and we know what we have to do to tackle climate change, how come that we're not acting? And that's something that's frustrating me, that I'm, as a green and radical one, although I'm thinking this is just very rational things to do, and we need to put them in place. So a lot of work to do. I want to say one more thing about electrifying. Yes, we need to electrify the cars. We need this motor shift, but that won't be enough. We also need to have a modal shift. We need to have fewer cars as well. I'm very sorry to say so, but we do have a lot of traffic jams, and we will always be needing cars, or for at least for some time, and some people are depending on the cars, but many people can get around. If you're in Brussels, we're quite proud of our public transport. It's not perfect, but it's good. And so using this public transport, using the bicycle lanes we put in place, walking is the best technology. It's for free. It's rechargeable, it's always accessible, you don't need to park it, it makes you healthy. Honestly, there's no technology invented like our 2 legs, so please use them, and it will give you a boost in your mental health as well.
Okay, do we need an electrical vehicle mandate for fleets? Yes, Monique. And then, Christophe, I'm going to ask you under whether Volkswagen might support that, and if so, under what conditions?
I agree with what Elke said, that maybe paying people with cars rather than with euros is not the best solution. But as if there is a fleet company, corporate fleet existing, we believe that this is really, how would I say, a driver for getting people into electric cars, because this is also fueling the second-hand market. And so if you have a mandate for electrification of the corporate fleet, you have quicker electric cars on the market. And because the second-hand owners have to, the cost of a second-hand electric car is much lower, and the running cost is very, very low. So that really will make electric cars much more quickly, more affordable for people who cannot afford a new electric car or even not a car. So for us, it's really a signal, and I would like to encourage both the car makers and the leasing companies to get over it and to embrace this obligation, and they can even make good money out of it. So what's the problem, in fact?
No. Christophe, it's something that could help the demand side of the equation. You say you need people to want these cars. Is this potentially an interesting?
I'm a little. Of course, I have to, and I'm also not convinced that this way is maybe the right way. But this is my personal view. At the moment, the public consultation is underway. I think it runs until end of April. So we have to wait and see what the outcome will bring. And personally, and also market-wise, I think what we have learned is that another regulation, already on another regulation where we have in place until 35 to phase out, is maybe not as helpful because it irritates. Because if you think about how long it will take, we now have 24. At the end of 24, maybe if the consultation runs into what William is expecting, and we will have something in place. Then the impact assessment process starts, legislative process will start. So when will we have a final legislation? Somewhere mid-26. Let's assume everybody is still in the new parliament and the new commission positively minded. So then another year, so it's 27 something, 20, whatever. So what is the impact of such a regulation at the end of the day when you already have to meet the 30 targets of 55%? Because our impression is that at the end of the day, between now and 2030, the whole thing will be done. Because we all are investing, that we see much more products, we see a lot of improvements, R&D is pouring in, we will have a value chain in Europe. Again, if we all work together, it's not about car industry alone, and politicians stay aside and say, look, we have the Green Deal, now you have to deliver. It's still some homework to do. But then I think market forces will do the rest. And again, we don't have a holistic taxation system in Europe. So different needs and different habits of how to use a company car. I know in Belgium it's mainly because taxation is as high as it is, unfortunately. In other countries there are other motivations to do it. So let's not over-regulate this whole thing, because people have to be convinced. And fleet managers are purely people based on facts and economic figures. So if the products are well and so on, I think we will have a kick-off also on that field.
Okay, so you don't see the value of an additional regulation for fleets, because with the rules we've already got, we're going to deliver by 2030.
Can I say the less the car makers and the lease companies oppose, the quicker the regulation will be adopted? Huh? I mean, if there is consensus, it will go very quick.
We've not got masses of time. I wanted to briefly touch on aviation. I'm going to look at you, Bea, for want of an aviation representative. Aviation definitely not going to be sorted by 2030. Well, I guess two questions. One, how is the ETS going to decarbonize aviation within the next 15 years? Because according to the way the cap is currently reduced, we're going to be out of free allowances by 2039. And two, are we going to do something about non-CO2 impact, which triples the climate impact?
I didn't know I was the aviation representative, but
you have just
no
become
problem
so.
to tackle. No problem. Just to comment on the social climate fund, we don't see it because it will kick in 2026. Yeah. And just to say that something that we need to improve is that all the investments from the revenues of ETS, and I'm talking last year around 40 billion, we are not very good, we, member states and the Commission and the Parliament, very good in putting visibility of where this money goes. And this is something of the new directive, that we are putting obligations in this transparency, because I think it's very important that citizens understand where the money, and whether tram is refurbished or installed, it comes from ETS money. When the renewable bill is coming, the renewable investment is coming for ETS money, or a heat pump. So we need to put this much more visible. On your questions, aviation has been in the ETS since years. That's not news. What we have decided in the new with Parliament and Council is to get rid of free allocation for ETS aviation. That is good. So no free allocation. There was no carbon leakage. Cost can be passed through. So this is out. And as you know, because I didn't mention at the beginning, ETS has come, the whole ETS on maritime that we started already a couple of months ago with maritime. The ETS is moving thanks to the Green Deal, for a coverage of the economy for around 43% to something like 73, 75%. So impressive coverage. So aviation is now buying the reduction from other sectors. This has been the past, mainly from the power sector, mainly from the renewable energy injection, and from the coal to gas switching. That's the reality. Aviation now is starting to find new solutions. And I think that I didn't mention the Innovation Fund. I think Vice President mentioned it. So Innovation Fund is money from the polluter pays to innovative solutions, around 45 billion, probably a little bit lower now with prices. But this is a very important thing. And what has the new legislation put on the table is a path to decarbonize, which is sustainable alternative fuels. So and we need sustainable alternative fuels for aviation and maritime. Let me hammer that. So we need to be reasonable policy makers and to make reasonable private society choices. The fuels needs to go to the scarce, to the sectors that they are more difficult to decarbonize. When there are other solutions, let's go for that other solutions. So sustainable alternative fuels is one. Of course, also hybrid planes that the industry is moving and trying to move, but I don't represent the industry, but I think it's a pertinent question, and we work with them Innovation Fund, we work with them Horizon Europe, so there are other paths. And so hybrid planes, why not? And aviation is undoubtedly plays an impressive role in connectivity. And I think we need to rationalize airports. I come from the periphery in Spain. When I go to Galicia, where I'm from, I need to take 2 flights. I would love to take 1. There's no train alternative. So we need to rationalize also. And connectivity is great. But when we need to promote modal shift when we can. And I'm just about to finish. We need to promote modal shift when we can, and we need to be rational in terms of energy consumption. Last point, non-CO2.
Yeah.
Yes, we are working on non-CO2. We have the mandate Parliament and Council told us to do. Off we go. And not because we are very obedient, that we are, but also because we are talking about 3 to 5 times the effect on CO2. And climate change. So we are doing this, we are starting with the monitoring, and we need to be ready next year. It's complex, but not impossible. We are doing it, and we are working with member states and experts to work in this non-CO2 monitoring.
Okay, so we should expect action on that, or proposal to act on that within the next 5 years, the new political
The monitoring
cycle.
starts next year.
So but I mean action to reduce
and we need
those
to come
emissions.
for 2028 the possibility, I know the text, by 2028 with a possible action on that area.
Okay. And so Thierry, just one final question on shipping. So the outcome of COP28 was we need to phase out fossil fuels in the energy sector. For shipping, what should be a phase-out date for heavy fuel oil, I would say, to start? And then you've obviously got other fossil fuel alternatives beyond that, but that's probably the most urgent one. Have you got an answer?
I think we need first to discuss about the other alternatives. And
assuming they're going to become available according to
but they're not.
plan.
And the cost is much higher. I mean, I'm going to use the teeny figures here. Advanced biofuels are 3-4 times more expensive than fuels currently used. E-fuels are 5-6 times more expensive than fuels currently used. And the challenge is to have, first of all, certainty at European level. This is why we intervened in the debate for the CO2 standards for trucks. And we said that these volumes of e-fuels shouldn't go to the truck industry, but instead to ships, because it's a sector more difficult to decarbonize. So we need certainty.
You've got a colleague, you've got a fan.
Just
the one.
Just one.
Just the one.
We need also to recognize that the shipping sector is quite diverse. You've got on the slide a container ship, and it's an important segment of the shipping sector. The good thing with the benefit for the container liners is that they have a fixed itinerary. This is not necessarily the case for all ships. For bulk carriers, for instance, they go from point A to point B without knowing where they're going to end in a week. And this plays a big role when we discuss about building in Europe industry hubs and industrial capacity. So diversity, to recognize that the shipping sector is quite diversified, is key. We need to talk about the finance part. You talked about the banks and access to banking tools. The shipping sector is one of the most difficult to get loans for the banks for different reasons. We've got more stringent Basel rules after the Lehman crisis. The thing with the ships is that they stay at sea for 30 years, 35 years sometimes, and this affects their risk profile. Ship finance has collapsed in Europe over the last 15 years and has migrated to other jurisdictions, mainly Asia, with clear safety implications. So we need also to do something there and to match. I mean, we will not have private finance without having public investments, and we need to use the money of the Innovation Fund in that purpose.
So you would say it's premature to start a discussion about phasing out fossil fuels in shipping?
I think it's time to have a serious discussion about what kind of fuels we need to have tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if we're serious about, first, there is an overall discussion how to get to zero.
Yeah.
But for us, the immediate question is how to reduce emissions tomorrow.
Yeah.
And to get there, we need to have the requirements for the fuel suppliers in Europe.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. I realize we're taking up more time than we intended with this discussion. Do we have time for a few questions or not? Do we move to you, Bas? Because we're at 10:02. I see one hand up. There's just one. Shall we take one question? There's only one hand that was up.
Make it a good one.
Make it a good one. No, there was...
Hello, my name is Jeppe from Green Transition Denmark. It was just following up on the last part on the fuels for shipping, because we're a big shipping nation in Denmark, and we have a huge discussion, of course, which fuels, not about that we should do it, but which fuels. But in excess opinion, are we looking into a bio-based future or a scalable electric hydrogen, green hydrogen-based future looking at the fuels? Because we have targets for aviation, blend-in targets already next year. We have such huge amounts in road transport already. So are you still thinking about bio because you mentioned bio, or is it green hydrogen-based fuels you're looking into?
I mentioned advanced biofuels, which is, by the way, what the Commission put in the 2040 communication a month ago. So we were really happy with this, with the text of the communication, to recognize that for aviation and shipping, we need priority access for advanced biofuels and e-fuels. But if you ask me if we have a special preference, we don't. But if we're serious about reducing tomorrow emissions from the shipping sector, it has to be also advanced biofuels. It cannot be only e-fuels.
Okay, thank you. There's lots more we would have liked to discuss. I'm thinking low emission zones, air quality would have been relevant. Obviously, the prospect of tariffs on Chinese EVs and their components. Local sourcing, we did touch on it a bit, but the importance of being able to source batteries in Europe, the effect of the IRA, and companies increasingly looking abroad for what they need. And then potentially, opportunities Europe has come late to, such as smaller EVs, which China is currently providing us with. And ultimately a question over who's going to decarbonize Europe. Is that going to be Europe, or is that going to be somebody else? I invite you to discuss those over drinks after this, because we have Bas Eickhout, our Spitzenkandidat from the Greens, who's been with the European Parliament since back in 2009, so has seen many of these files come and go. He's going to leave us with some reflections on what we've heard today and how that sets us up for the future. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you very much. I've been taking notes, so let's do a bit of an evaluation now of the debate that we just heard. First of all, I'm really happy to see a full room, because this shows a bit, hopefully, that you're all motivated for the upcoming European elections. Because to be very honest, the Green Deal is at stake and is on the election formula, I would say. It is really going to decide on what will be the future of the Green Deal. And to be very honest, the moment you hear the Commission talk about implementation, be careful. Sorry, Beatrice, but you mentioned the word implementation just two times too often. And that is usually when the Commission is saying, okay, let's not do too much new regulation. We're just going to implement what we have on the table, and that's going to be the next term. I think the campaign will determine whether that is going to be the outcome, yes or no, of Green Deal 2.0. Because be assured there will be a Green Deal 2.0. The question is, what will be in it? Will it just be implementation, or will it be really something new, better, and progressing and accelerating? As William also showed that we need to do that. By the way, if we are only going to implement, then of course we're not going to reopen any of the files before. Because when we were doing CO2 standards, every time the Commission told us, don't change before 2030 because that's not regulatory safe for the car companies. So I also assume the car companies will not now ask for reopening before 2030 any of the targets. I was just a bit unsure on your 2025 answer there. But here we can trust. Here we can trust on the Commission that they will never reopen before 2030, because when we want higher ambition, that was not allowed. So here, great trust. It's very clear the Green Deal needs to accelerate, the Green Deal needs to be better, and in that sense, there is a lot to do. And I think what I still miss a bit also in this discussion, I think really in transport, and if you look at the challenges that we are having ahead of us, I think we can really embrace a green industrial deal. Don't hold back on that. Really embrace the green industrial deal. But don't put it like some of the CEOs are saying, we need an industrial deal next to the Green Deal. No, the Green Deal is our green industrial deal. And that also gives us a lot of opportunities also for the transport economy. First of all, if I'm talking about a green industrial deal, I'm looking at a far better link between the circular economy and the climate agenda. It has not been fully linked at all, to be very honest. It's also two different DGs. You've been in both, so we can improve on that. But I do really think that if we are looking, and also we were discussing that, at all the materials that we are having in our economy, and if we really want to be serious on our greenhouse gas reductions, then we really need to be serious also on the circularity of our materials. And I think this also is something that we need for example, the discussions on the batteries. That brings me to a second point where a green industrial policy can be. We need to also put policies in place that are really looking at the demand side. This has always been a bit of the weaker side of the European Commission. We always look on the supply side, targets, settings, etc., far less on the demand side. And therefore, really, again, the answer, sorry, Christoph, but the answer on the corporate fleet. First of all, you were complaining about a chicken and egg problem when we were talking about electrification. Well, exactly when we are doing something on the corporate fleet, you are creating a huge demand that can solve your chicken and egg problem. If we do it then smart and also make it a European corporate fleet, then we are also doing something for a European sovereignty. So it's also something that you can work on as well. So don't be so defensive, embrace it, and ask for also an action from the Commission on the corporate fleets, because there is a chance for the European car industry, which you need, because otherwise we will just buy the Chinese electric cars. You don't want that. That brings me, of course, also with the discussion on the demand side, the famous SUVs that have not been mentioned. I want to reiterate a bit of a discussion that I had with the former CEO of Volkswagen, with Herbert Diess once. It was some kind of new year. I've lost a year, but 5 years ago. Maybe there was a reason for that. Herbert Diess back then said, when I was addressing the point of SUVs, he was making the point, yeah, but once we start electrification, then on its own the cars will get smaller again because it's too heavy when we do electrification. Somehow I have not heard that anymore. So I think maybe also here some of the policies need to be helping there in order to deliver on smaller cars, because that's also needed, and indeed in the end also less cars. Then because I just want to show that there's a lot to be done in the Green Deal, right? So also, and that's what the elections are about. What I miss a bit when we were talking about the maritime sector, these are the smaller ones, but really we have a lot of inland waterways in Europe, and there really the electrification of inland waterway transport is really something where Europe can excel. And yes, we have the long-range transport, but we have a lot of inland waterway transport, and there really we know electrification can deliver and should deliver, and really Europe can be leading there. So again, also there, I think we should not forget these kind of sectors, and for example, CO2 standards there, also a good idea that probably the Commission can take on board. On international aviation, I will be very brief. We made very clear if CORSIA is going to fail, ICAO, international one, then we will have to take European action on international aviation. I think we can already conclude that they will fail. So probably we need to prepare already a bit of European action on international aviation as well, just to fill up the program of the Green Deal. Maybe I think the last point that I want to say, and which is really a serious one, is, by the way, everything was serious, of course, is that all this together, plus the investment that we need in public transport, and that was mentioned a couple of times as well, and also by Elke, showing what kind of investments are needed in order to transfer a city like Brussels. This investment program comes on top of all the money that we need for Ukraine. There is a defense demand, there is a massive investment program ahead of us. And I think I would really invite all environmental NGOs to be much more active on that side of the European debate. What we are now planning to do on the Stability and Growth Pact is restoring austerity. There is a discussion on a new fund at the European level. What will happen once the RRF fund is ending in 2026? It's a cliff edge that Europe is heading towards. There is really a massive need for public investment. Even Christoph said that there is a lot of demand. But then I also want everyone in this room to be active on those discussions that are taking place at Europe right now. Because if we're doing it wrong, then we are shutting off the possibilities of national governments. Then we're shutting off the possibilities of the European government. And then the only way to do it is state aid, and then we know which country will do the investment. So I think this is really also important. So I think to conclude on all these matters, we need a very good and compelling campaign, and I think it can be. I think sometimes in the Green Movement it's a bit like 2024 will be more difficult than 2019. Well, we're used to that, isn't it? We are used to uphill battles, and usually we have a lot of fun with uphill battles. 2019 was fun. 2024 will be more fun because we are going to beat the polls, we will do better, and we will make sure that the Green Deal will be back on the agenda in full force, and that the Commission will talk about much more than just implementation. And to conclude, Monique, don't retire, we need you.
Thanks, everybody. I'm not going to try and add to this. I think this was a perfect ending. Let's go and have some drinks and reflect on all the great things that were said here. Thanks.